Hey fans of the podcast, we're back and it's time for another episode of Meeting You Where You're At. And we're getting caught up on some episodes that we recorded just a few months ago over the summer. My buddy Leo is here to help me out. There he is. And we're getting some intros done for you today. First up is a great conversation with Rebekah Bastian. Rebekah was the founder of OwnTrail, which was a social timeline platform which was acquired by Teal. It was actually a premature acquisition for Rebekah, as she had issues with raising capital that she will go into in full detail during our episode together. It's a great conversation where Rebekah really focuses on the challenges associated with women who are trying to raise venture capital, and in her case led to an exit before she was hoping to do so. Right now, she's the SVP of product at a company called Glowforge, so we'll also talk about the cool things that she's doing there. And she spent 15 years at Zillow, which many of you know is a very popular software as a service real estate platform. So if you're interested in the challenges associated with keeping your startup funded, making the difficult decision to sell maybe before you didn't want to sell because of funding challenges, you're definitely going to want to listen to this conversation with Rebekah. She's crazy insightful. She's really funny, a delight to chat with. So coming right up, our episode with Rebekah Bastian. Rebekah, good afternoon, good morning, all those things. Wonderful to have you here. We really, really appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And such an exciting time in your life, right? So much change. You're selling companies, you're starting new jobs, you're about to start new jobs. There's a lot happening, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it's simultaneously a really busy time, but also I'm in a month of Rebekah, as I call it, in between the acquisition and starting the new job. So it's actually the most mellow time I've ever experienced too.
I was going to ask you that. One of my friends years and years ago, he had just finished his PhD, and I'm this very type A driven person. I won't be surprised if you're similar. And I was like, his name is Mohan, and I'm like, Mohan, you finished your PhD. What's next? Like, what are you going to do now? And he was like, Richard, now is a time of reflection. and I always remember that, right? That was like 30 years ago when he said that. But I always remember that, like, yeah, maybe there are like major milestone efforts that major milestone achievements in your life that come, and then you do need to reflect a little bit, right? So the month of Rebekah is some reflection. It's some like,
yeah, it's just embracing not doing too much, which I too am type A. I think technically I basically haven't stopped doing things probably for my entire adult life, and or maybe my entire life. I don't know. But it's interesting how naturally it's coming to me. And I think it's also just knowing that it's for a finite amount of time. Like, I don't think I would do well with just like infinite reflection, but I'm like, okay, I have 1 month that I'm making most of it, and I'm going to make most of it by just like sitting here outside in a chair and staring at the sky or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. Do those things. Yeah, do all the stuff and things. That's wonderful. Well, and unfortunately, as you and I both know, this month is going to go by in the blink of an eye, and then you'll be right back into all of it, right?
Yeah. But absolutely. I mean, there's also when you're about to start something new that you're really excited about, that's fun too. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Good space now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you're like, I don't take my vacation till the end of the summer. So on the one hand, I'm like waiting to get to my vacation, but you also don't want to rush away the summer, right? So I'm sure you're the same way. Like, I really want to start my new thing, but I also don't want to rush away this little bit of free time that I have between now and the new thing. But I'm really excited to start the new thing, right?
Exactly. Plus it's summer in Seattle, which is amazing. So it's good time to have a little time to myself.
Are the salmon running yet or not yet?
I don't know. I haven't checked on the salmon.
Yeah, I know the copperheads only come in certain parts of the time of year, and it's good. It's good if you're into copperhead salmon. It's good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think. So my husband went on like a fishing boat a couple of weeks ago and came home with a bunch of salmon and halibut and stuff. So
there you go.
We're out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know you spent a lot of time, Rebekah, in with one organization in particular, right? Before you kind of, it seems like, pivoted to your entrepreneurial journey. I'm a little curious about the work that you did before an entrepreneur, and then talk to us a little bit about your transition away from that, that kind of role that you had, and then thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go and found something and do something on my own. These are not easy decisions. A lot of people that listen to the show are grappling with that themselves right now.
Yeah.
Like, should I go and do this thing? Should I play it safe? Maybe playing it safe is not the right thing to do, right? So I'm a little curious as to your little individual journey there, from kind of where you were with an organization for what appears to be a long period of time, and then kind of moved into your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so yeah, I was at Zillow for 15 years before starting OwnTrail.
Sure.
I was at Microsoft for a few years before that, but really like Zillow is where I spent the bulk of my career.
Yeah.
Starting when, one of the first employees when it was still a stealth startup, and then
Watching it grow, right? Yeah. Yeah.
growing into vice president of product and then vice president of community and culture. So really great career there. I did do a lot of entrepreneurship throughout my career, so
yeah.
I started a lot of things, everything from like the first mobile apps to, the social impact work and stuff that led to the community and culture team. So I definitely had experience starting things from scratch in more of a grassroots way, but within obviously the comfort of a bigger organization. But yeah, I also, my last several years there, I was also advising startups. So I got a little bit
got a little piece of that too.
Yeah, totally. Which I think is really helpful. I really believe in, and this was like one of the premises for OwnTrail, but the idea that you can't be what you can't see. So, being able to get to know other founders and be an advisor to what they were building was helpful because, you just realize like, oh, they're just humans too,
Sure.
Amazing, spectacular humans that I got to work with. But it was like, oh, they're not like a different kind of person I am. And I think having those, just that proximity and those realizations can help make it a little less scary as well too. But
I was gonna say, I'm gonna assume that they derived a lot of benefit. Like, so you were at Zillow, to your point, in the very early days when you were one of the very first employees. So you grew up through so many parts of what Zillow, came from, a small organization to what it is today, like household name that it is today, right? Yeah. I have to assume that any startup you were advising along the way could, especially maybe sounds like more towards the back half of your time at Zillow, were appreciative and found a lot of value in that journey, right?
I hope so. I mean, yeah. Totally. And I made like lifelong friends along the way too.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Like through the founders I was working with. But I think yes, in the sense of like, I'm good at product strategy. I'm good at like thinking through, creative problem solving kind of stuff. Like I can definitely be helpful in that sense. I learned myself after starting my own startup that my early experience at Zillow was not your typical early stage startup.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it was too the two founders had they started Expedia. They had a lot of experience, but they had credibility. They honestly matched quite a lot of patterns in terms of like the Silicon Valley pattern matching
and what they're looking for. Yep.
So I mean, really, like with working at Zillow, we kind of there was a lot of money shoveled at us from the beginning, and we were having to operate like a really early stage startup. And, and we were given the benefit of not even having to have like, a revenue stream from the beginning. We were able to just build an amazing consumer product. So I kind of went out thinking that might be an option and kind of learned that that's not the way everyone gets to operate.
Right. I mean, everybody doesn't have the benefit of fitting, to your point, the Silicon Valley pattern, having been successful in the past at a previous company. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So looking back, I'm like, both I was really kind of blissfully unaware of how difficult early stage startups are from within the purview of, this kind of special circumstance of a startup.
Sure.
So I, in some ways I was probably obnoxious to actual early stage startup founders in terms of like what I thought was possible from that purview, because, I've also, since then I've found really valuable mentorship and advice from really senior corporate executives who also have no idea what I'm going through.
Right.
In terms of just resources and scrappiness and stuff. So there's some things that are really helpful from, like working with a corporate executive as an advisor. And there's some things where you're like, okay, if you haven't been through this yourself before, you just don't really get it. So
I struggle with that I struggle with that in the mentorship and advising that I do, because while I have worked at startups, I am, and I have founded one organization. I feel the majority of my career has spent, in these larger corporate settings or other, settings, mid-sized corporate settings, where, to your point, it's like, I don't necessarily know what you're feeling right now, but I'm going to try really hard to help you benefit from my experience and mistakes I've made along the way, whether they be in the corporate environment or other places, and hope that that's transferable. And usually it is, right? And usually, to your point, it's just they just want someone to talk to and someone to work through an idea or a problem with, right?
Yeah. But like, every early stage founder is at a point, or many points along the way where anyone could be like, so how can I be helpful? And you're like, I need money. Like,
I need money. Yeah.
That's what's going to be helpful right now, is access to capital,
Right. Yeah.
And like, and I didn't have, I wasn't helpful in that sense, but yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, I think they were mutually beneficial relationships, as traditionally hierarchical relationships, like mentor-mentee, advisor-advisee, coach-coachee. I think like there's this kind of stigma that they're one way and hierarchical, but like in reality, that's totally not true. And both parties really benefit. So yeah.
And you had mentioned that the work specifically that you had done in community and culture at Zillow sounds like in the kind of towards the latter half of your career at Zillow became an impetus, right? Or a starting point for you, a catalyst, whatever term you want to use, for OwnTrail. And I loved the quote that you have about the benefit of being the living example of crooked paths. I think that's so amazing. And you just talked a little bit about how you can't do what you can't see or visualize. So let's chat a little bit about your inspiration for OwnTrail and how you were able to connect the dots between your work as a community and culture leader to starting your own enterprise specifically focused in the way that you did.
Yeah. So I wrote a book, was kind of the
that was sort of the bridge between the two, was the book.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the book was really, so my book, Blaze Your Own Trail, it's this like choose your own adventure kind of book. So you remember that childhood series?
Loved those as a kid. Yeah, always.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So it's, so there's all these different paths to the book, and it's exploring the different decisions and pathways that specifically women are taking through their personal and professional lives. And the goal was really just embracing the idea that there's no one right path. I would talk to a lot of different people at different stages in their careers, through leadership, mentorship, just random coffee chats, friendship. And there's this really kind of underlying feeling that everyone seems to have, where you feel like you just know where you're going, know how you're going to get there. Right. It's supposed to, you look
all mapped out.
Yeah, you look around on like LinkedIn and social media, and it feels like you're seeing all these really like clean, linear, perfect paths of accomplishments and highlight reels, and you're like, oh, I'm the only one struggling, which is totally not true. Yeah, right. But there just wasn't a way to really see what the real journeys look like. So the book was my first attempt at trying to celebrate the fact that we're all on these winding, unpredictable, non-linear journeys. And it was really fun to write. I wrote that while I was still working at Zillow. And then I signed with a publisher, Barrett Kohler. And there's like, a year waiting period between when you sign the contract and the book comes out. And so being the not patient person that I am, I started kind of playing around with what I thought might be a really cool book launch website, there's a cool way for people to share what their paths have been, is like kind of tie into the book. But then as I started working on that, I pretty quickly started to realize that there's something much bigger than just a book website here. And it was like, kind of took on a life of its own pretty quickly. Really just the premise of OwnTrail originally was like, well, okay, what does it look like if you share your journey really authentically, where you've been across your personal and professional life? Because like part of the premise is that they're so inherently intertwined. This idea of like compartmentalizing, oh, this is work me, this is personal me, like that is inherently kind of a disadvantage to us. And so really like owning our stories, but then also the power of what it looks like if you can see what other people's journeys really look like. So the kind of solidarity and confidence that comes from seeing that no one's on this perfect path. And if you were to like even take this person and say, oh, I aspire to be exactly where they are, and then look at how they got there, and look at that same point, how all these different people got there, they're all going to be totally different paths. And there's something really empowering about realizing that. So that's what led to OwnTrail, and that's what led to me quitting a job that I loved in order to go build it out. And really, I think that you asked about like how I made the decision to go do that. I think it really just came down to this moment where I realized I can't not do this. Like,
right.
As my friend and one of my advisors, Rebekah Level, told me, she's like, well, the toothpaste is out of the tube. And I think that's totally right.
Can't put it back in now.
So far, I can't put it back in. I'm like, I got to just go with this. I can't not do it. And so I did.
What's really impressive to me, Rebekah, is that you were able to see the path and the visualization between what initially, and I don't want to minimize this, so please correct me, but what initially you seemed like you were building, which was so much more of like an online community, right? Of like-minded people. You're promoting your book, you're doing that. You realize, oh my God, this is way more than a community. This is a business, right? Potentially here. Seems like that to me. That's a very impressive line of sight that you had there. Were there any specific moments along the way that kind of brought you to that line of sight? Was it just more and more people coming to the website, more and more people willing to share their journeys? I guess, when do you see that there's a there, Rebekah?
Well, I mean, I've been a community builder for, I guess, for a long time, forever, maybe. Like that's just one of my kind of inherent passions, bringing people together in a way where we're supporting each other. OwnTrail started out being a very like just kind of creating this artifact, creating this timeline of your life. And so it didn't start off with really community features, but we did start off from the beginning being really community driven in terms of how we were building it. So people are kind of putting these trails out there with the intention of helping other people by sharing your story, but it wasn't as interactive yet. It was kind of putting content out into this onto this website. And but we were building really strong relationships with our community from the beginning because I've really believed from day zero that the best way to build, especially a platform like this that's really human centered, is to be building it with the community, not for them.
Yeah, sure.
There's this kind of arrogant mindset that a lot of the tech industry has, which is like, we know what you need. This is what we're building. How you're going to use it. You're going to like it. You're going
to love it. Yeah, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah. And I think, I think we felt the humility from the beginning of saying, well, we don't know how this is exactly going to unfold, but we're going to work with the community to figure that out. And so one of the things that we learned from the community pretty quickly was like, wow, this is amazing. We love this. It's a really powerful experience, mapping out my life in this way. Now what? Like where do I go from here? And what we kind of figured out was people wanted to be able to not just share what their journey was, but be actively working on that journey and helping each other do that. And so it evolved into, people being able to have conversations about what they're sharing, being able to ask questions and answer them. And then the really big kind of, a pretty big step function in the utility was when we introduced help beacons. And that was a way for people to share, milestones that you're working. So each of the little circles on someone's trail is a milestone. And so for ones that you're currently working through or working towards in your life, being able to say, this is something I need help with. And a way for the community to really rally around and help each other with those things. And it was powerful because people aren't used to asking for help all the time,
Right. So it's hard for a lot of people to ask for help. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So we structured it in a way that kind of helped them ask for actionable help and really making it be, obviously consensual help. So instead of just someone being like, oh, let me give you advice on this, and you always want that advice or whatever, being able to say specifically, what are the areas I want help with and how can you help me? Is it advice? Is it connection? Is it solidarity if you've been there before? Is it resources that you recommend? And so that really evolved with our community. And that's what I think, being able to have these conversations and being able to ask for and give help is really what kind of was the glue that kind of tied the community together.
Rebekah, did you see in the context of that for women, it was harder to ask for help in these cases? Is that kind of, was that a touchstone point for OwnTrail? I know in a lot of the women that we've talked to on the show, it's like, it was really hard for me to ask for help because it was like, I needed to give the impression that I had the answers because that's, what was sort of expected. Did you experience that with OwnTrail as well? And some of the women that were in part of the community?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of like that is
general statement.
True. Yeah. And so with OwnTrail, we started off being women centered, and then about halfway through the journey, we evolved to open up to all genders. But yeah, I think that, one kind of feminine quality, if you will, is this more abundance mindset where people are really more, it's less about the individualist scarcity mindset where you're just looking out for yourself, and it's more about this abundance, more community minded mindset. And I think that is kind of a feminine trait, even when we are open to all genders.
Community builders. Yep.
Yeah, but oftentimes when you have that abundance mindset, you tend to be giving more than you're taking. That tends to be part of the nature. So, but people want to help you. It's actually like oftentimes asking for help is a gift to people that care about you because they want to help. So, I think structuring that was helpful, and we heard from a lot of people that it was a really powerful tool to both have the space where it's normalized asking for help, but also like, we did it almost kind of Mad Lib style, like I need help with this thing in order to do this from this type of person, and like really kind of structuring it in a way that made the asks clear.
Was there a way, you mentioned sort of the giving more than you're getting or helping more than you're receiving type of notion. And I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? So we all have our buckets of water, and, I'm taking a lot of water out of my bucket to put in yours because I want to help you, but no one's replenishing mine. Right. Was there a way for people to kind of visualize, like, you're giving this much, but you're only receiving this much? Was there a way for people to kind of see the potentially not the discrepancy, but maybe I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it sounds like no, not necessarily.
No, we didn't do that. It's interesting. In fact, we really tried to decouple we didn't make it a like ask and offer kind of thing, because we didn't want it to feel transactional. So it was more, separating out like, these are the needs I have, and then, these are ways that I could be helping. And so, it's an issue, like, I'm not working on it now, so
I understand.
Get involved in the future.
I'm just curious about that disparity. So clearly, you and I are both product people. We definitely have that in common. We're both product centric folks. I know I know that for a fact. And you mentioned sort of the human-centered design aspect of a lot of what you did. And I'm a big proponent of user-centered design and human-centered design aspects. But those things take a long time, Rebekah, right? If to do them correctly. And look, you were a startup. I'm sure you had your board and and other people that were investing in your organization wanting to see results more quickly. Did you have challenges there, sort of balancing the time and energy that you needed to put into this human-centric approach to what you were trying to build, and then just also sort of the expectations and the demands that were being put on you either from the market or your investors? I'm curious as to how maybe you balance some of that.
We didn't have too much external pressure because I actually didn't have a board.
Okay. Well, that's pretty nice. Yeah.
I'd only raised pre-seed so far. So I raised 1.5 million in pre-seed, and it was mostly angels, a couple institutional investors, but it was pretty chill actually in terms of like what you hear about pressure from investors that they're like, but I think part of it too was like, when I was out there fundraising, I was really intentional about finding the right kind of investors, which made it like a lot harder. But I didn't try to trick anyone into investing in us under the premise of we're going to be one of those at all costs kind of companies, I was very honest about like the way I wanted to build this company, the values that we're building with. And so we ended up with people that were really supportive.
They were deliberate about that as well. Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that a lot. Like I said, especially coming from a UCD or HCD perspective where these things take time, right? And you can go to your original comment about like, well, we're a tech company, we know what's good for you and we know what's right for you, and just build that. You can maybe get that to market faster. It'll probably fail, but you can get that to market faster than sort of taking the time to do more of that centered design approach, right? Or design center approach.
Totally. So, I mean, but it's, I think it's, there's not like one right way, obviously, like that's my mantra. There's no one right path here, but I think like I didn't have a ton of pressure, but also like, I mean, honestly, like we can talk about the acquisition, like in a lot of ways, I feel like it didn't work out. Like, it's great that I was able to like find a soft landing and have it be acquired, but like, and I wrote about this publicly as well, but I didn't want it to be acquired yet. Like I wanted to keep building, and I ran out of runway, and it was possible to raise in this market. But honestly, like who knows, like maybe if I had more pressure to be like focused like hardcore on revenue from the beginning, like maybe I wouldn't have been in that position.
Maybe.
Like,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
It's hard to say. Like, yes, we built in accordance with our values. We built something beautiful. It was incredibly human-centered. People loved it, and I think those are a lot of the reasons that I was able to get acquired. Sure. But like also yet after 3.5 years, and
right.
that turning out not the way I wanted it to. So it's I think there's an optimization there between like building the perfect, beautiful thing that impacts human lives and like building a sustainable business. And I learned a lot from the whole thing too.
And to your point, there is no linear path there, right? So, and this is a great segue, because I did want to talk to you a little bit about your decision, and like you said, you did speak publicly about it. And, when you and I talked a couple of weeks ago and you said to me, my company's being acquired, immediately I started digging into that and read you basically say, yeah, I didn't want to be acquired, right? But I had to, because I couldn't raise money because of market conditions. And maybe there was also some aspects of your gender in that. I don't know. I don't want to presume, but we do definitely know that women have a harder time raising capital than men. And we've talked a lot about that on the show as well. So I am kind of curious as to your, if you could give a Cliff Notes version of kind of what happened there. I think it's really interesting for people to hear that, yeah, it doesn't always go the way you think, in the sense that you do get acquired when you don't want it. Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe the goal is acquisition, right? And you realize in this case, that wasn't the goal, or I got acquired when I didn't want to be acquired. So would you mind talking a little bit about that, Rebekah?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, this was definitely like, I went after the acquisition. Like, it was definitely the plan B I wanted, but sure. I just preferred plan A, which was to keep building.
To keep scaling. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I mean, we did Techstars Anywhere in the beginning of this year, 2023. So it started in January. And so I knew our runway was really tight, and I knew the market was soft. But I was like, well, and
it was getting softer every day in the early part of the year.
Yeah, totally. But, we'd gotten into Techstars, which we were really excited about. So I was like, well, I'm just going to wait to raise until after Techstars is over, just to be more prepared for it. And also, like, to be fair, I tried like doing a bridge round before then, and nothing was really happening. So
sure.
So we went through that, and it was, good programming for sure. Really great.
Sure. Yeah. Techstars is great.
Yeah. And so I went out, like, we did Techstars demo day, and that's when I kicked off the raise, and I was like super prepared. Like, OwnTrail was doing better than it had ever done before. We were in a really good place. I'd kind of made some difficult shifts around the team. We had a really good, strong team going forward. We were ready for this. I had my whole process. I had made, the most beautiful deck we'd ever had, like all the things, right?
Everything was locked and loaded. Yeah.
And I went out to start raising, and I actually got a ton of meetings. It wasn't that I couldn't get meetings. I even got a lot of second meetings. I got a lot of interest and enthusiasm, but each one of them slowly started getting some similar answers around like, this is amazing. We love you. We love what you're building. We just need to see a little more. We need to see a little more traction. We're not writing a lot of checks right now. Because this was like, the market's awful. Basically, like it's all AI startups that are getting money right now. Right. The Silicon Valley Bank thing had just happened, so everyone was trying to like keep their portfolio companies alive, and like it was rough. And I just just one after another, all the ones that I had marked as like optimistic on my spreadsheet,
attrition started happening.
Like one by one, they're all like, next round, we'd love to stay in touch, and so I just started realizing, I'm like, this isn't happening. And I kind of calculated like the minimum I would need to raise in order to feel good about taking anyone's money. Cause I was like, well, I don't want to take a bridge to nowhere. Like, if I don't think the market's going to get much better like this year.
No, not this year. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, well, if we don't raise enough to get to a really different place in the business, like if I go out like, 3-6 months from now and we still have kind of similar metrics, then that's gonna still suck. So it was like 6 months or 6 weeks left until cash out, and I just pulled together all my advisors, and I was like, I don't think this is happening. And we had kind of tried thinking through all different ways of maybe approaching it. Like, are there quick ways to bring in cash? Like, all the things. I'm like, I just and I had a few $100,000 soft circled at that point, but I just didn't want to take it.
You didn't feel comfortable taking anyone's money, knowing that, to your point, it was a bridge to nowhere, right?
Exactly.
So, and that shows a lot of integrity, by the way, because there are a lot of people that wouldn't necessarily show that much integrity as part of what they were doing. I'm assuming part of that is your character, but it sounds like these were really close advisors to you in some cases as well. And it just, that maybe you're going to want to come around to those folks again, knock on their door again in the future. And you want to make sure that you're able to do that. Right.
Yeah. Advisors and investors and everyone and team, like, but integrity is important. Like that's one of the values that's really important in terms of how I wanted to be building this. So, I kept trying to raise, but simultaneously I'm like, I think I have to explore a plan B and start seeing so I actually I made a list of priorities of what was important in terms of the outcome here, because there's a lot of different ways you can slice it, of course. And the number one priority for me was keeping OwnTrail alive. We have this, there's thousands of people that have come to really love it and use it. And I just wanted it to keep existing for them. And these people have shared really intimate, vulnerable parts of their lives on here. I wanted to just
go away. Like one day they wake up and it's gone. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that was priority number one. I needed to keep existing, and I needed to keep existing in a way that upholds our values. So for example, one of the really core values we've had since the beginning was that we'll never sell people to advertisers. Nice. That just
felt yucky.
All the bad things out there that we see on social media and stuff. And so that if I'm going to sell it, it needs to kind of stick with that value and the other things that are important. And then the second highest priority for me was our team. We have these amazing people, and it's a tough job market out there right now too.
I don't want anybody to feel like they have to go and now they're in a hard position. They can't find work. Right.
Yeah. So that was important to me too. And then, our investors, and then, I listed my own ego as being last, and I just wanted to name it for myself. I'm like, it can be scary. These decisions might make me, if I'm prioritizing my ego, I might make different decisions, but I wanted to intentionally kind of put that last, because I don't think that failure is judged that harshly by other people. We judge ourselves really harshly for what we consider to be failure, which I'm not saying this was a failure. Obviously a lot.
No, not at all. Yeah.
I just wanted to name that. So I kind of, I named the priorities, and then I made a long list of companies that could potentially acquire us. Another thing I did that I think was really helpful was I took my own medicine and really asked for help, and was really just about everything.
I was going to ask you that. When did you get to the point where you said, I need to ask for help here now? Right. Yeah.
This was about the time. Unfortunately, I didn't feel like I could use OwnTrail to do that, because I wasn't publicly sharing what was happening.
Yeah, of course. So you need to find a way to do that in clandestine, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I did, I had this private group of CEOs that I'm part of, and I sent an email to them, and I was just like, you guys, this is really hard. I've been trying to raise money. I can't. I think I'm going to be acquired. I'm feeling really sad and anxious about it. Has anyone been there before? And these are all really, a lot of them are very big, further along, successful CEOs. And everyone just responded and was like, yep, I've totally been there. Let me talk to you about it, which was really cool. And, but it definitely made me realize that okay, wait, so if everyone's been there before, why can't I find any information online? There's no blog posts or articles or anything.
Why hasn't nobody wrote about this?
Right. Yeah. So, okay, so clearly this needs to be talked about more. But I started just meeting with people and getting their advice and their stories and connections. A couple of people introduced me to this person who was a pretty big M&A broker, and way out of my league, but he agreed to talk with me just as a friend and give me some advice. And I told him what my inclination was, which was, I was like, I feel more comfortable just going to these people, the ones that I know, and just telling them hey, I'm almost out of money. I need to be acquired.
Right. It's going to be really straightforward and really vulnerable.
Which is exactly what you're not supposed to do according to common advice around acquisitions.
Right. Yeah.
He actually told me, he's like, you know what? There's no acquisitions happening in this market right now. And if it's going to take a couple hours for somebody to figure out that that's actually what you want while you're talking about partnerships, then you've probably lost them already. So he's like,
they're going to move on.
Yeah. So he kind of gave me the confidence to go with that approach.
Wow.
And that's what I reached out to some CEOs that I knew in similar spaces, which, I had relationships with, because we've been really focusing on partnerships and collaboration since the beginning. And I was just like, hey, this is what's going on, and that's what opened up the conversations. I ended up with two or three, definitely two, but then like three for a while, potential opportunities of
acquirers. Yeah.
Acquire us. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the board ended up shooting it down. But yeah, and then so Teal's who we went with. And so I've known Dave Fano, the CEO of Teal, for quite a while, and he's a really good guy. And we've partnered with Teal over the years, very aligned in terms of like our missions and values, really good people all around on the team. So I felt just really good about it, and they're doing really well.
That's great.
They've been growing, they're doing great. So it felt like a really good company to, a good safe place for OwnTrail to land. And so that ended up feeling good. Yeah.
I was just thinking back as you were coming to the close there on how you had all of these sort of ethical considerations that you went through. You had these sustainable considerations that you went through. So I really appreciate, Rebekah, how you just sort of outlined that around like, the most important thing was, was being ethical and being above board and being honest with what we were doing. And, the next important thing was the sustainability of the company for our employees. And then the next more important thing was, I think that was really helpful. And I think people who listen to this will find how you articulated it as I just play it back in my head right now, sort of the lessons learned there, but also that you had a very, and again, maybe this is because it's OwnTrail and there's a path here, but it seems like you really thought about this and you had a very, very specific approach to, okay, we're going to be acquired. And this is a very difficult decision that I need to make as an entrepreneur. But I really appreciate, like I said, how you just kind of talked us through how you incorporated all those different practices into your decision. That's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there's my own experience with this, obviously. And I feel good about how it ended up. It's not it wasn't my first choice. And I definitely would love to still be building, but like we were talking about before this, I have a really exciting new job lined up already, which actually
absolutely.
The new opportunity came from one of those CEOs that I reached out to during
very cool.
time. Yeah.
Very cool.
And ended up, so there's a lot to that, but I also am aware now what a deficit there is in kind of like real acquisition talk, because my own experience of just I had to really go digging to find those real stories, and I found them
super interesting. Yeah.
And so what's interesting is so I've had because I was so honest about what this experience has been, and I wrote about it, and a couple of news outlets have picked it up and stuff. I've had a lot of founders reaching out to me asking like, oh, can you tell me more about this? Yeah. And so just last week, I realized I'm like, okay, normally I'm the type to say yes to like other founders that need help. I'm like, wait, I can't possibly meet with all these people, especially while I'm doing my month of Rebekah of not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, come on, we have priorities.
So I just put something out last week on LinkedIn and Twitter saying, hey, a lot of people have been reaching out and I don't have time for all this to meet with everyone separately. So I'm just going to do a quick AMA, ask me anything next week if anyone wants to jump on. And that's tomorrow now as this recording.
Right.
And I already have over 60 founders that want to join that. And it actually bums me out. Like I'm thrilled that we can have this conversation.
Yeah, no, I hear you saying it's definitely bittersweet. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm just like, there's a lot of people that have questions about this kind of thing. There's a lot of people that are going through similar experiences as me and not being able to raise right now in this market, and that are trying to find soft landings or trying to figure out their plan Bs. And I'm like, there's just not real and honest resources out there. And I'm like the last person that people need to be like getting advice from. All I have is my one experience of this, like it would be cool if like, there's people that had a lot of experience, like, investors that have helped a lot of portfolio companies through this, or maybe multi like serial entrepreneur types that have done this before. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I just did it myself, and I did it in all the wrong ways according to the plan.
Yeah. But there's the uniqueness in what you did, right? Around like the asking for help and the being vulnerable. And again, I know you did it in a closed or a sort of closed circuit kind of way. But look, the fact that you've got 65 people signed up for your AMA means that there is a need here, right, for this and for people to hear
multiple stories.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. No, just not. Yeah. And maybe that's what will come, but maybe that's what will come of this, right? Is there will be more stories like yours that will come out of this, people who kind of incorporate what they've heard from you and your experiences, and also be willing to share their experiences, because look, man, there may be another book here I'm hearing potentially, right?
I know, I'm like, gotta pace myself with different projects, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I hope that more people will share authentically
Sure.
what and how they approach things like this. Because I think there's a really huge kind of net positive for the greater entrepreneurial community with doing that.
Agreed. Agreed. What are you most excited about now, Rebekah, for what's coming up next for you as you kind of think about how you're evolving and the changes you would like to see?
Um, well, I'm really excited about this new job I'm going to be starting. I'm going
That's
to be
cool. Yeah.
SVP of product at Glowforge, which is
Hmm.
this really amazing laser 3D printer company based here in Seattle. And my friend Dan Shapiro is the CEO,
Very
and
cool.
just amazing team. Everyone I've met so far is really cool, and they're doing some really big things right now. So I'm just really excited to work on that, and I'm excited to be responsible for product and not for
Not for
fundraising.
everything. Yeah. Everything related to fundraising. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
I'm
just
like, oh, that's what
everything,
I'm good at.
period.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're just responsible for everything, period. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, oh, that sounds so relaxing to just be at a product. Yeah. So yeah, and that, and then just I think because Glowforge is really enabling creators to make whatever's in their mind.
Yeah.
I am a creator by, at heart. I've been an artist and crafter and writer and maker my whole life, really, in different forms. And so like working on tools that help people be creative, like I'm excited for what that's going to unlock for me in terms of just personal creativity as well.
And to your point about 3D, I mean, you made a joke earlier about like, oh, if I was in AI, I would have been able to raise money. But this is another area kind of akin in a lot of ways to AI, right? In the
Well, yeah,
versatility
and I think
and
I'm
the
using some AI
innovation.
here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure AI is a big part of it too, but the versatility and the things that are going on in this space as it pertains to 3D printing and everything. In the innovation hub where I have an office, there's a 3D printing lab, and I'm always consistently amazed at the stuff that's coming out of that lab and what people are
Oh, it's so
creating,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how innovative they are and how quickly it happens. And you could definitely see that as an area of innovation where I think nobody quite understands the full potential of 3D printing yet.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's a whole trajectory ahead going from creativity to utility in terms of what people can be
Yes.
creating. Yeah.
Yes. And as we enter this, all these conversations about, sustainability and eco-consciousness, it becomes to me really interesting to think about what you can do with that technology and different types of raw materials that you could utilize and definitely have a much more impact on the economy as well as on the environment. Right. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very cool. That's very, very
Absolutely.
cool.
So,
Rebekah, before we let you go, we do kind of ask this question from time to time on the show about, definitions of sort of personal success. And this goes way back to a conversation I had when I was in high school with a teacher who gave us the writing assignment of, when you look back upon your life, what will have defined success for you? And certainly when you're like 15 years old, 16 years old, you have a very different, perspective of what defines a successful life. It's usually kind of centered in a material world, right? When you're that young. If you think about definitions of success for you, Rebekah, and you kind of think about when you want to look back through your journey and see something amazing, anything come to mind in terms of what defines success for you?
yeah. I mean, I think like the relationships and the connections that I have would be number one,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
just, in terms of the impacts that I've had on other people's lives and vice versa that they've had on mine.
Mm.
And then think, things I've created that I'm leaving behind, and
Yeah, the legacy. Yeah.
yeah, the legacy, and just being able to look back and feel like, I think that as long as I'm living in accordance with my values,
Right.
then I don't have a lot of regrets. I tend to not be someone that feels a lot of regrets. So I think just being able to look back and be able to say like, yeah, I lived a life that I feel good about in terms of how I lived according to my values. Like that feels like success to me too.
That's sound. I love that. Thank you so much. Well, we will be absolutely watching your progress with your new opportunities at Glowforge, and I'm sure this isn't your last entrepreneurial journey. So we'll look forward to what comes next and next and next after that. So thanks again for taking some time and telling us your story, Rebekah.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was fun to talk.
We'll talk soon.